Everybody, Pete here. HVAC Greatness coming to you from Panama. Can you see the mountains out there? It's the golf course over there. It's really nice. Hey, I got a story for you. I don't know what made me think of this, but back when I had my business, I was on a service call, and I got a call. I guess my business was about maybe 2-3 years old at that point, so I was starting to get some traction, and I still took calls that I didn't always want. And this particular one happened to be one. It was an older gentleman in his 80s. He lived in a mobile home, and it was an oil furnace. I hated oil furnaces, but I worked on them. So I get there, and I'm working on the oil furnace, and I must have spent a couple of hours trying to clean that mess up. It was basically, it had not been maintained, right? So I pulled the electrodes, the insulators were fine on those, what you call ceramic insulation. The electrodes were not too bad. Changed the nozzle, changed the filter, changed the cat eye, cleaned everything up. And I remember during the process, when I met the old man, his name was Mr. Thurman. I'll never forget this guy. When I came into his house, it had that kind of that old man smell, elderly people smell, if you will. And but he was, he was very respectful, very professional, nice guy. During the call, I cleaned up my hands outside because you know how dirty oil furnace, oil furnace service very dirty. But I had to go to the little boy's room, so I used his bathroom. Now it was a small mobile home and it only had the one bathroom. And I remember looking off over to the bathtub, and it was filled up, not full, but it was pretty full, of cases of like dog food and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, well, where does he bathe at? I said, well, probably does bird baths. Back when I was in the Army, they taught us to do that out of our helmet. We called it a steel pot back then. And, you bathe all your essential areas and everything else. And he must do something like that because he wasn't, didn't smell that bad, but, he had older clothes, and he dressed, for his generation, I guess. But anyway, came time to give him the invoice. And he was shocked, you tell that. And he got a little angry. And he says, how in the world are you charging me this much? And so I had to go through the whole explanation of, this is a business. These parts are very expensive. It's not just my time, it's the company's time and everything else. And so he wasn't very happy, and he wrote me a check, and he shorted the total. In other words, he didn't pay the total, he paid less. And he said, Mr. Ramsey, this is going to have to do for now. I'll get you the rest later. And I explained we normally don't do business this way, but I understand, we'll work with you, right? Because being poured mouth seemed to be something I attracted back then. I'm on a fixed income and this and that and the other, only later to see some evidence that that was not the case. They're going on a cruise the next week, or they just bought a new car or something. And, I was always the person, I was always raised that you don't, if the roofer came over to my house, I'm not going to beat him up on his price. His price is his price. I'm going to talk to my family members, right? Get some help there. That's the way I thought. That's the way, Anyway, let it go. I get in the driveway, and all that training that they used to teach us in sales training, I don't know if you remember this, but when you look around somebody's home, you look for things like a luxury car to see if they're a luxury type customer, or look for gadgets to see if they are a gadget type customer, or little things to see if they're an IAQ customer, if they have asthma, those little sprayers, or some type of air purifier, things like that. And it dawned on me, I really didn't look around to see if I misjudged that book by its color, because so many times, it's just people poor mouthing, hey, look, it costs what it costs, right? So I realized he didn't have a car in his driveway. So he must rely on public transportation, taxis and stuff. And so I look over at the invoice, and there's his check written in that squibbly old man writing. Wasn't very steady. And I put my van in reverse. I back out, and I go. And then it hit me. The dog food in the bathroom. The dog food in the bathroom. And I'd heard that sometimes the elderly people, when they didn't have enough money for food, they would buy canned dog food as a supplement for their nutritional needs. And he didn't have a dog. But he was a very prideful man, the way he carried himself, and I just took that with me down the road. And I told my mother about it. Because it affected me, because I was raised with certain values that you take care of others and things like this. And she says, why don't you invite him next week to dinner? It was the week before Thanksgiving. So the next day I called Mr. Thurman up and I said, Mr. Thurman, how's the furnace working? Is everything working okay? He said, it's fine. He said, I'll get you your money when you can. I said, no, I really didn't call for that. I wanted to make sure you're working okay. And listen, next Thursday is Thanksgiving, and I don't want to intrude on your plans if you have others, but my mother, she always overcooks, and it's good. She's a good cook. Would you be interested in coming over and having dinner with us? And he paused for a minute. He very politely said, I would be honored. I said, good. So how about I pick you up Thursday, whatever time it was? And he says, fine. So I did. I picked him up. And he came over. My mother, you gotta know my mom. She's just a special lady. She cooked. She catered to him, and he was very respectful. He dressed his nicest, but it was old clothes. Found out he was a veteran. He served in World War II. He did not have any family. He was by himself. He was in his 80s, and he was on a fixed income. And after dinner, we took him home, and he was very thankful. It was one of those, he was prideful and thankful to the point where I really felt bad on some level. I don't know why. But he had lived his life, and there he was existing. And I remembered all of those times of those people who, I just seemed to attract this back when I first started my business, who would poor mouth me, and want something for free. And it had hardened me to a certain degree. Listen, if I need money, I'll go to my family. I suggest you do the same, or a bank or something else. But what it costs me to do business, But I looked around my home that night, and it was a nice home. We had just bought it the year prior. I was driving a brand new Z71 Chevy pickup truck, extended cab. Oh, I love that thing. My wife had a new van. Our business was starting to get traction. The community that had made all of this available. I had 3 children. My youngest boy, at the time, he was having some struggles, so we put him in a private school, and it really made a difference for him, and he ended up going on to college and whatnot. But I owed that to my community, and if sometimes we just take, this is the price, and sometimes we give back. But knowing when, not to judge that book by its cover, but to look beyond that. Not to take them at face value with the words that come out of their mouth, but look behind the eyes. He wasn't angry, he was frustrated. And the frustration didn't come from anger. When when somebody scares you and it triggers anger, you want to lash back. His anger was more frustration. It was triggered by embarrassment because he was a prideful man who had fought for his country, who had lived his life, who didn't want to ask for help. And it reminded me of my need as a service provider to get back to my community and to look past the obvious. Pete Ramsey here, HVAC Greatness. Just a flashback to younger days. Hope you're doing good. Bye-bye.